So the order came through on a Monday. Sector 7 of the Outer Veil Relay Network was being decommissioned, not because it had failed, because the Council's Infrastructure Committee had determined, after a 14-month review, that the sector's strategic value no longer justified the cost of maintaining a human presence there. The relay stations would remain operational on automated systems. The trade routes would remain open. The navigational beacons would continue broadcasting. The humans would live. All three of them had already left, as it turned out, by the time the order reached Station Varus 9. Engineer First Class Tamaz Reyes was the last one. His two colleagues had rotated out 6 weeks earlier on their standard schedule, and their replacements had never arrived because the replacements had been reassigned to Sector 3 before they shipped out, and the communication about this reassignment had gone to the wrong administrative office. And by the time the error was discovered and the order to decommission had already been issued, it had seemed simpler to let Reyes finish his current rotation and then close the station rather than send anyone new. He had been alone on Varus 9 for 6 weeks. This had not particularly bothered him. Reyes was 44 years old and had been a deep space engineer for 19 years. He had worked on stations, on vessels, in field conditions, in the specific variety of solitude that comes from being the only human in a radius of several light towers. He was comfortable with solitude. He found it when the work was good to be the condition most conducive to doing it well. No meetings, no reports, no one stopping by to discuss things that did not need discussing. The work had been good. Varus 9 was a relay and maintenance hub, one of 7 stations in the sector responsible for keeping the navigational infrastructure operational. It was not glamorous work. It was the kind of work that happened in the background of the galaxy's operations, the maintenance of systems that everyone depended on and no one thought about, the way you do not think about the pipes in your walls until the water stops running. Reyes thought about the pipes constantly. In 6 weeks alone on the station, he had done the work that 2 engineers were supposed to share across a full rotation, plus additional work that had accumulated before his colleague's departure, plus work that the automated inspection systems had flagged as low priority and therefore left for human assessment. He had assessed it. Most of the low priority flags were correctly categorized. Some were not. He addressed the ones that were not. When the decommission order arrived, he read it twice, filed an acknowledgement, and then spent 30 minutes sitting in the station's small common area with a cup of coffee going cold in his hand, thinking. He was thinking about the sector. Not about himself. Not about the reassignment that would follow. He had already received his next posting, a station in Sector 12 that was well regarded among engineers for the quality of its equipment and the relative complexity of the work. He was thinking about what the decommission meant for the sector, and specifically about the things he knew about Varus 9 and the 6 other stations in the network that would not be in any formal report, because they were the things you only knew from being here. He had been here for 19 months. He knew this sector. He made a list. Sector 7 of the Outer Veil was not empty. It was not a major transit corridor. It was not a center of commercial activity or political significance, but it was inhabited in the specific way that unglamorous corners of the galaxy are inhabited by small communities, agricultural stations, research outposts, families who had come out to the edge of things for reasons that were their own and had built lives there. Reyes had met most of them. Not because his role required it. His role required him to maintain the navigational infrastructure. The communities in the sector were users of that infrastructure, not his responsibility in any formal sense. But 19 months was a long time, and the communities were there, and Reyes was constitutionally unable to be in proximity to people without eventually knowing something about them. The Solvari research outpost at Beacon Point had a team of 11. He had met them when a micrometeorite strike had damaged their communications array, and they had contacted Varus 9 for assistance. And he had gone and fixed the array and stayed for dinner because they had offered, and because dinner with 11 Solvari researchers who were studying stellar formation patterns turned out to be one of the more interesting evenings he had spent in the Outer Veil. He had visited 4 more times after that. They had in return explained more about stellar formation than he had previously known and sent him, on one occasion, a recording of a stellar event that they had captured in real time and considered too beautiful not to share. The Monathi agricultural station at Far Reach was a family operation. 3 generations, grandparents, their adult children, and 6 grandchildren who were being educated by a combination of remote instruction and whatever the adults around them knew. He had met them when their irrigation system had developed a fault that their own maintenance capacity could not resolve. He had not been asked to help. He had seen the fault notification in the sector's shared maintenance log. Technically, he was responsible only for the navigational infrastructure, but the shared maintenance log included everything and had gone. The fault took 4 hours to diagnose and 6 hours to repair. He had slept in the station's spare quarters and gone home the next day. The grandchildren had watched the repair with the concentrated attention of people for whom anything that moved and made interesting sounds was worth watching. The youngest, a girl of about 7, had asked him 3 questions during the repair that indicated a precise mechanical intuition. He had answered them seriously. She had nodded and filed the answers away with the efficiency of someone taking notes. The Velhari transit point at the sector's outer edge was not a community exactly, more of a way station, staffed by rotating crews of 2 or 3 who changed every 3 months. He had met approximately 15 different Velhari over his 19 months, never the same ones twice, which meant that every relationship had to be rebuilt from the beginning. He had found this mildly frustrating until he realized that the Velhari transit point crews had developed a shorthand for him. A brief description passed between crews that translated roughly as the human from Varus 9. He will come if something breaks. He brings his own tools. And that this shorthand was more efficient than any relationship he could have built individually. There were others. A small Keth research vessel that had been anchored in the sector for 8 months studying a specific gravitational anomaly. A Solvari family that had been traveling for 3 years and had stopped in the sector because the grandmother was ill and they needed to wait for her to recover. A relay technician from the Council's Automated Maintenance Division who had been stationed at a beacon cluster on the far side of the sector, and whom Reyes had met exactly once at a joint maintenance review, and who had struck him as competent and quiet and very far from home. He knew them all. When the decommission order came, he thought about what it meant for them. Not dramatically, not with the quality of someone inventing a crisis. He thought about it practically. The automated systems that would maintain the navigational infrastructure after the human station was decommissioned were good systems. They were well-designed and well-maintained. He had spent 19 months making sure of that, and they would handle the standard work without difficulty. But automated systems handled the standard work. The non-standard work was a different matter. He thought about the irrigation fault at Far Reach. An automated system would have seen it in the shared maintenance log and filed it as outside its operational scope. The family would have had to submit a formal service request to the Regional Maintenance Office. The Regional Maintenance Office served 47 stations across 3 sectors. Response time for non-critical agricultural equipment faults was, based on his experience with the log, between 3 and 6 weeks. 3 to 6 weeks without irrigation in the sector's growing season was not catastrophic. It was also not nothing. He thought about the Solvari research team at Beacon Point. If their communications array was struck again, they would have to submit a service request. Same response time. In the meantime, they would be isolated from their institutional support network, unable to share data in real time, unable to call for assistance if something more serious developed. He thought about the Velhari transit point crews passing through every 3 months, unfamiliar with the sector each time, relying on the shorthand about the human from Varus 9. The shorthand would stop being accurate. There would be no human from Varus 9. Well, he finished his coffee. Well, he picked up his notebook. Well, he wrote for 2 hours. Well, the list was not a protest. Reyes was clear about this in his own mind. He was not building a case for reversing the decommission order. The order had been made by people with a broader view of the Council's infrastructure priorities than he had, and he had no particular reason to believe they were wrong. Sector 7 was not strategically significant. The automated systems were capable. The decision made sense from the perspective of someone who was looking at 19 sectors and a maintenance budget that did not STR. Zedge to all of them. He was not building a case, he was building a record. The list documented everything he knew about Sector 7 that was not in any formal report. The specific fault patterns of each beacon cluster, which were within acceptable parameters on paper, but which he had learned to read as early indicators of component, where that would become problematic in 12 to 18 months. The irrigation system at far reach, its repair history, the specific component that he had replaced with a slightly different grade than the original spec because the original grade had not been available and the replacement was better. The documentation for which he had filed in the station's maintenance log, but which he was now transcribing into a standalone document that could be read without the log's context. The communications array at Beacon Point, its history, its vulnerabilities, the modification he had made 8 months ago that had improved its storm tolerance, and that the automated maintenance system would not know to preserve if it attempted a standard recalibration. The gravitational anomaly that the Keth research vessel was studying. He had no scientific expertise in this area, but he had been present when the vessel's lead researcher had explained, over dinner at the transit point, that the anomaly had a periodic fluctuation that affected navigational accuracy in a small but non-trivial way in a specific corridor near Beacon 3. The researcher had filed a report with the Council's scientific division. The report had been received and catalogued. It had not, as far as Reyes could tell from the shared systems, been communicated to the Navigational Maintenance Division. He noted this. The Velhari transit point, its water recycling system had a recurring fault minor self-correcting, not worth a formal report that he had addressed 3 times in 19 months. Each time it self-corrected, the underlying cause advanced by a small increment. His estimate was that the system would require a proper repair within 4 to 8 months. He documented the fault history, the progression, and the repair that would be needed. The list grew. It was not, by the end of 2 hours, a short list. He looked at it. Then he thought about what to do with it. The formal answer was to file it with the Regional Maintenance Office, where it would enter the queue alongside the service requests for 47 other stations and be processed according to the priority system that governed all of them. It would be useful, eventually. Things on it would be addressed eventually. Reyes thought about eventually. He looked at his departure schedule. He had 12 days. He thought about what could be done in 12 days. He made a different list. On the first day, he went to Far Reach. He had not called ahead. The family knew him well enough that calling ahead was not necessary, and calling ahead would have prompted questions that he did not have clean answers to yet. He arrived in the morning, when the grandchildren were beginning their lessons and the adults were in the fields, and he went directly to the irrigation system's control hub and began the work he had been thinking about since the previous evening. The irrigation fault he had repaired 8 months ago had, as he had noted in his list, an underlying cause that the repair had addressed but not resolved. Addressing without resolving was standard maintenance practice. You fix the presenting problem with the resources available and note the root cause for later. The root cause in this case was a pressure regulation component that had been operating outside its optimal range for an estimated 3 years before he had first encountered it. The repair had extended its operational life. A replacement would end the cycle. He had the replacement component in his tool kit. He had ordered it 2 months ago when the diagnostic had suggested the repair's expected lifespan, and it had arrived at Varus 9 last week. He had been waiting for a good time to install it. The decommission order was a good time. He installed the component, 4 hours. The grandmother of the family, who was 81 years old and had been a mechanical engineer before she retired and still kept her tools in a case under her workbench, sat on a crate near the control hub and watched. She did not interfere. She asked 2 questions, both precise, both showing that she understood what he was doing and why. He answered them. She nodded. When he finished and ran the diagnostic and the system came back clean, she said, in galactic common that was old-fashioned in a way that implied she had learned it decades ago and had not updated it since. You did not have to do this. He said the replacement was already ordered. It made sense to install it. She said, you ordered it before you knew you were leaving. He said, I knew it needed doing eventually. I ordered it so it would be here when it W. As time. She looked at him with the particular quality of the very old, which is the quality of someone who has seen many things and has learned to distinguish between the ones that are what they appear to be and the ones that are more than that. Oh, she said nothing else. But when he left, she shook his hand, and the handshake had a specific weight to it that he understood and did not require words. On the second and third days, he serviced the beacon clusters in the northern corridor, not because they were flagged for maintenance, but because his notes said they were 12 to 18 months from component wear and 12 to 18 months from now there would be no human in the sector to address it. He replaced what needed replacing. He recalibrated what had drifted. He documented everything in the formal maintenance log and in a separate document he was compiling for the regional office. On the 4th day, he went to the Velhari transit point and fixed the water recycling system properly. The crew currently stationed there were ones he had not met. They had arrived 3 weeks ago, new rotation, new people. He introduced himself and explained what he was doing and why. The crew leader, a young Velhari engineer who could not have been more than her 2nd year of service, asked if she could observe. He said yes. She watched the entire repair and asked good questions throughout. When he finished, she said, the handoff note said you would come if something broke. They did not say you would come before it broke. He said the handoff notes were written based on what happened before, not what was needed now. She said, what is different now? He said, I am leaving. When I leave, no one will come before it breaks. So I came before it broke. She was quiet for a moment, processing this. Then she said, how long did you know it would break? He said 4 to 8 months. She said, and you could have left it for whoever came after you. He said, whoever comes after me will be responsible for 47 stations. They will have enough to deal with. This is a small thing. I have the time and I have the parts and I know this system. It made sense to do it now. Oh, she looked at him. Oh, she said, the handoff notes should have said this. He said probably, but they didn't, and now you know. On the 5th day, he drafted a comprehensive sector guide, not a maintenance report. A guide, the kind of document that assumed the reader was competent but unfamiliar with the specific character of this particular sector. It covered everything in his list plus everything else he had not thought to put in the list until he started writing. Fault patterns and their histories. The communities and their situations and the specific needs that did not appear in any formal record. The gravitational anomaly and the report that had not been communicated to the navigational division. The Solvari array modification and why it should be preserved. The names of the people he had met and what they were doing and what they might need. He wrote for 12 hours. On the 6th day, he went to Beacon Point. The Solvari research team were in the middle of a data collection period when he arrived, which meant that half of them were at their instruments and half were asleep, and all of them were operating on the focused but distracted quality of people who are tracking something that requires continuous attention. He did not interrupt the data collection. He went to the communications array and ran a full diagnostic. The array was functioning well. The modification he had made 8 months ago was holding. The diagnostic showed no immediate concerns. He ran a second diagnostic anyway, because he was here and the second diagnostic cost nothing and he was leaving. The second diagnostic showed something the first had not. A calibration drift in the secondary receiver, minor within acceptable parameters, the kind of thing that accumulated slowly and would not be a problem for several months, and then would be a problem all at once when it crossed the threshold. He recalibrated it. When the lead researcher emerged from the data collection period 4 hours later and found him in the array room, she stopped in the doorway and looked at him with the expression of someone who has found an unexpected thing and is deciding how to categorize it. She said, "I did not know you were coming." He said, "I didn't call ahead. I hope that's all right." She said, "Is something wrong?" He said, "No, I found a calibration drift in the secondary receiver. Minor, but it would have been a problem eventually. I corrected it." She was quiet. He said, "I'm leaving in 6 days. Sector decommission. I wanted to make sure the array was clean before I went." She said, "You came to fix something that was not broken yet." He said it was drifting. Things that drift eventually land somewhere you don't want them. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said something that surprised him. She said, "Sit down, I want to show you something." She led him to the observation room, which was the best room on the station, a wide viewport with an unobstructed view of the stellar formation field they were studying. She pulled up the real-time data and showed him what they had been collecting. He did not understand most of it. Stellar formation dynamics was not his field. But she explained it patiently and clearly, the way people who love something explain it to people who are willing to listen, and he listened. And by the end of 40 minutes, he understood the shape of what they were watching even if he could not have reproduced the mathematics. What they were watching was a star being born. Not quickly, stars are not born quickly. What they were watching was the process, the long, patient accumulation of matter and pressure and time that would, in some span of years or decades or centuries, produce a star where there was currently only a dense, bright cloud. She said, "We have been here for 11 months. We will be here for 7 more. And then someone else will come or no one will come and the data we have gathered will go into the archive. But we will have seen this. We will have been here in this specific place at this specific time and we will have watched." He looked at the viewport. He said, "That's something." She said, "Yes." She paused. "You fix the things that are drifting so that we can keep watching. That is also something." He looked at her. She said, "We know you maintain the array. We know you come when things break. We have perhaps not said clearly enough that we understand what that maintenance makes possible. What it has made possible for 11 months." He said, "It's the job." She said, "Yes, and what the job makes possible is this." She gestured at the viewport at the cloud of forming light. "This is what I wanted you to see before you left, so that you know what you have been keeping watch over." He sat with that for a while. Outside the viewport, patient and indifferent to anyone watching it, a star continued to become itself. On the 12th day, Reyes ran a final check of Varus 9. He had done this check before many times, the standard end of rotation review. This time it was different because there would not be another rotation after it. This was the final check that a human would make of this station, possibly for years, possibly for much longer. He was thorough. He ran every diagnostic available to him. He checked every system, every backup, every redundancy. He updated every log. He compiled the sector guide he had been writing all week and attached it to a formal submission to the regional maintenance office with a cover note that explained clearly what it was and why it should be read by whoever was responsible for the sector's automated systems. He checked the systems a second time. He found 3 things that he had missed the first time. Small things, all of them, the kind of things that were within acceptable parameters and would remain so for months. and that he was only finding because he was looking with the specific quality of attention that comes from knowing you will not be here to look again. He addressed all three. Then he sat in the common area for a while. He thought about 19 months. He thought about the component he had ordered 2 months ago and installed at far reach. He thought about the Velhari engineer who now knew what he knew about the water recycling system. He thought about the calibration drift in the Solvari array and the star being born beyond the viewport. He thought about 31 problems that would not happen, and 3 that would happen later rather than sooner, and a sector guide that a maintenance technician in some future rotation would open and find more useful than they expected. He thought about the 7-year-old girl at far reach who had watched the irrigation repair with the focused attention of someone taking notes. He packed his tools. He did one more walk through the station, the habit from 19 months and from everyone who had taught him that the walk was how you found what you had missed. He found nothing he had missed. The station was as clean and functional as he could make it. He closed the airlock. He filed his departure log. He left. The sector guide reached the regional maintenance office 14 days after Ray's departure. The technician who received it was named Vel-Orath, 12 years in the maintenance division, responsible for 43 stations across 2 sectors. She received a large volume of documentation in the course of her work. Most of it was standardized, formatted, covering the same categories in the same order, useful in the way that standardized things are useful and limited in the way that they are limited. She opened the sector guide. She read for 3 hours. Then she did something she had not done before in 12 years of maintenance work. She forwarded the guide to 6 other technicians in her division with a note that said, "Read this, all of it." Then she filed a request with her division head for a review of the documentation standards for decommissioned departures, which she felt, after reading, were insufficient. The division head read the guide. She agreed. The documentation standard review took 4 months. At the end of it, the Regional Maintenance Division adopted a new protocol for station departures, requiring outgoing personnel to produce a sector knowledge document before leaving. The template was based on Ray's guide. His name appeared in the protocol's development notes. He did not know this for 2 years. He found out when he received a communication from the division head explaining the protocol change and thanking him for the guide that had prompted it. The communication noted that the guide had already proved useful on 3 occasions. The gravitational anomaly report that had not reached the navigational division had been corrected. The far-reach irrigation system's component replacement had been noted, and the family informed of the extended service life they could expect. And a maintenance technician on a routine pass through the sector had used the guide to identify and address the beacon cluster, where that rays had flagged as 12 to 18 months from becoming critical. The communication also noted briefly that the Solvari research team at Beacon Point had completed their observation period and departed. Their final data had been transmitted to the Galactic Scientific Archive. The stellar formation data they had gathered was, according to the archive's receiving note, the most comprehensive record of this particular formation event in existence. The communication ended by saying that the division head hoped his current posting was going well, and that she expected the Sector 7 protocol to save them significant trouble over the coming years. Rays read the communication in the common area of his station in Sector 12, where the work was good and the equipment was excellent, and there were 4 other engineers on rotation with him, which was noisier than he was used to but not unpleasant. He wrote back within the day. He said, "Thank you for telling me. I'm glad the guide was useful. One note, the water recycling system at the Velhari transit point has a recurring fault pattern that the guide describes. The repair I made should hold for 18 to 24 months. When it resurfaces, the component to replace is the pressure equalizer in the secondary loop, not the primary one, which is what the standard repair guide will tell you. The standard guide is wrong about this. I learned it by fixing it 3 times. The division head forwarded this note to the technician responsible for the sector. The technician filed it in the sector knowledge document. When the fault resurfaces in 16 months, the technician on duty opens the document, reads the note, replaces the correct component, and the repair holds. Reyes is not there. He is in Sector 12, running his morning walk, looking at systems that are within acceptable parameters and thinking about what is drifting. He finds 2 things. He fixes them. That is the story. A man who was the last one, who had 12 days and a list and the specific understanding that when he left, the standard systems would handle the standard things, and the non-standard things would wait for whoever had time, which might be a long wait. So he addressed the non-standard things. Not dramatically, not with the quality of a man who believes he is doing something remarkable, with the quality of a man who has a list and 12 days and a set of tools and the knowledge that the sector guide is not going to write itself. He fixed the irrigation component he had ordered 2 months before he knew he was leaving, because he had ordered it knowing it would eventually need doing, and eventually had arrived. He fixed the water recycling system properly because it would break in 4 to 8 months, and there would be no one to come before it broke, so he came before it broke. He recalibrated the Solvari array because it was drifting, and things that drift eventually land somewhere you do not want them. He wrote 12 hours of documentation so that whoever came after him would know what he knew, because the knowledge was not his to keep. He had gathered it from 19 months in a specific place, and it belonged to the place and to the people who would care for it after him. And then he sat in the common area for a while. He thought about the 7-year-old girl watching the repair with the attention of someone taking notes. He thought about a star being born slowly behind a viewport, in a station he would not see again. He thought about the things he had fixed, and the things he had documented, and the things that would not happen because he had taken 12 days and a list and done the work that was not on any formal schedule but needed doing. Then he packed his tools. As he did the walk, as he closed the airlock, he left. That is the whole of it. No ceremony, no record that he would ever see. No acknowledgement from the sector he had served for 19 months because the sector did not know how to send acknowledgement, and even if it had, he would not have been there to receive it. Just the work done as well as he could do it, and then the leaving. This channel is built for the people who do the work before they leave. The ones who order the component 2 months early because they know it will eventually need replacing and they want it to be there when it is time. The ones who write the 12 hours of documentation because the knowledge is not theirs to keep. The ones who walk the station one more time looking for what they missed, finding it, addressing it, and then going. You have been in a sector somewhere. You know what it means to be the one who knows a place, who has learned its fault patterns and its rhythms and its non-standard things that the standard systems will not catch. You know what it means to leave, and to know that what you leave behind will be handled by systems that are good at the standard things. So you fix the non-standard things before you go. Not because anyone asked, not because there is a protocol for it, though there will be now, because you were there and you knew, and the 12 days were yours to use. Fix it before you leave. Write the guide. Replace the component you ordered 2 months ago. Walk the station one more time. The next person will not know what you knew. Leave them something. That is the move. Quiet, undocumented, done in the days between the order and the departure when no one is watching and nothing is required, and the work is entirely yours to do or not do. You do it. Because it needs doing. Because the sector, even after you leave it, will still be there. And the people in it will still be there. And the star will still be becoming itself behind the viewport of a station you are no longer on, patient and indifferent and dependent on no one. But the array will be calibrated, and the irrigation will run. And somewhere in the regional maintenance office, a document will be open that tells the next person what you knew. That is enough. That has always been enough. If this story found something in you today, the component ordered early, the guide written in 12 hours, the walk done one more time, subscribe. Every week this channel brings the stories of the people who fix the things before they leave, who write the knowledge down, who do not keep what the sector taught them. Leave a comment, tell me about your sector. The place you knew, the things you fixed that no one asked you to fix, the document you wrote that someone would open later and find more useful than they expected. Share this with the person who is about to leave somewhere. Tell them, write the guide, fix what's drifting, walk it one more time.